All right. Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome to the open mic. I am Rich Eisen, and I'm supposed to remember to ask people before I get too far into this if you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe button down below so we can keep building this channel. Many of you are familiar with the open mic because for years I've been doing this and talking to authors and writers and creatives from all over the country, all over the world. And that was all on my blog, my written blog. So we've only recently moved to video. I've heard from many of you that I have a face built for radio. Probably true, can't dispute it. But nonetheless, we're here on my YouTube channel. So please subscribe. If not for my loveliness, please subscribe for the conversations that I have with some of the best writers and some of the best creative people in the world. Talking to us about their work and how they do what they do. Really fortunate today to have a writer whose work I absolutely love. He's a great guy. He's a baseball fan, which makes him tops in my book. But mostly, he's a fabulous writer. Fellow Northern Californian now, like me. Please welcome Joe Clifford. How are you doing, Joe?
Good. Thanks for having me. I will try to keep my dogs barking in the background to a minimum, but they're.
Okay, man, I'm a dog guy. As I tell most people, dogs are my favorite people. So, hey, so let's get started. You have a wealth of work and in a couple of different areas, and I want to touch on all of them a little bit. But let's talk about the newer stuff right now, because I know you have some new stuff from last year. Completely brain dead. Lake House. Sorry, completely brain dead on that one for a minute. And I know you've got a new book that's coming out a little bit later in July. So if you can, let's talk about the Lake House a little bit. Tell me a little bit about the book, and then we'll move on to some other stuff.
Sure. Yeah, the Lake House was my first foray into the domestic psychological thriller, which is really all I read these days. Mostly women writers. Mary Kubica and Wendy Walker and Jennifer Hillier, these writers, it's a different world I live in now than the world I kind of grew up in. Actually, I kind of returned to the world I grew up in. It's the break from the world I spent my 20s in, the homeless drug stuff. But yeah, that's just where I'm drawing my inspiration from. So the Lake House is it's set in Connecticut. Over the 4 seasons, and it's more a character study. It's sort of a literary thriller, which being my first attempt, I guess if I could go back and do some things differently, just based on reactions, I would have. I was really, really excited when the book came out. I thought that was going to be the big break, but you always think it's going to be your big break. And reaction to it has been, people who've liked it have really loved it, but there's been a lot of that meh sort of reaction, and I understand that criticism. I think it's this is not a great way to endorse your book, but I think it's a little slower than people are used to my writing. I wanted to, I did what I wanted to do, and I succeeded in doing what I wanted to do, but I'm not sure what I wanted to do was in the end the smartest move.
Well, okay. Let me just follow up on that, because I want to ask you about the Shadow People, which is coming out in July. But what you said is something that always interests me, especially as the industry has winnowed itself down and narrowed down, and there's, now only 5 or 6 major publishers and et cetera. It does feel like when somebody like you, 4, right? I guess that's true. where you made your bones for the most part with the J. Porter series, which is one of my favorite crime fiction series ever. I absolutely love it.
Oh, thank you.
But it seems like you get typecast in publishing as much as you do if you're an actor or a singer, and it makes it hard to branch out and do something a little different and not fit into those little molds that they want to put you into. Tell me a little bit about that and how that maybe impacted the last book.
Sure. There's a great story about Ed O'Neill when he was starring on Married with Children, and he had done a film role, and he was playing a serious general or something, and they did his test screening, and he walks out and everyone starts laughing because they're seeing Al Bundy, and they're like, hey, we got to let you go, we can't, like, people just think of you too much like Al Bundy. Of course, and he's had success later on, with Modern Family and stuff. But yeah, I think you get put into these little compartments and these little places, and it's convenient, and they know what to expect. And as an artist, you're always trying to, I don't want, no slight, something like a Lee Child, who's an amazing writer and a really terrific human being, and really giving in this community. But I don't want to write 17 books about the same character. I don't want to write 17 books with the same, goes into town, finds. I don't want to do it. He does it great. He's, I'd kill for Lee Child's career, and he's a wonderful dude. But I don't want to do it. It's not what I want to do. But yeah, if you branch out too far, too fast, too soon, it's jarring, because and readers expect, and rightly so, they pick up a Joe Clifford book and they expect certain things. All my books are going to have some kind of drug subplot, some kind of drug angle. They're generally going to be downtrodden people. That sort of hard scrabble Rocky meets Springsteen thing that I do. And the Lake House departed from that a little more than maybe was wise. It was just I should have gone baby steps. But you listen to the audience, you listen to your readers, because they're the ones who read. And if you deliver a product, no matter how happy you are, when I wrote that, I thought, yeah, man, this is it. I got it. And some people have been like, yeah, that's it. You got it. But a lot of people were left underwhelmed, and looking back is to try to figure out the reason why, so that you don't make the same mistakes. And I do think they're mistakes. I think, this idea that you just write for yourself and it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks is bullshit. It's something, it's a nice thing to say, it's a nice thing. You get up on these panels, like, well, you write for yourself, and who cares, and you get to the class, it's a lie. You write for yourself, man. Like, write a poetry journal, or sit in your room, like you're writing for an audience, you're writing to connect. And if you produce the product and it doesn't connect and you don't get the reaction, the only thing you can change is you. You can't change everybody else. So you have to say, even though you might love a book, and I love The Lake House, and I think it's a great book. To me, it's the best thing I've done. But to look at, you see the reactions you're getting, you have to see how you're culpable. You have to see what you've done and how you can correct it, because I can't change anything else. And so yeah, I do listen to audience reaction. I do listen to reader response. And you welcome, the intelligent critiques, the 1 stars. They're always like, sucks, terrible, but there are, some very good criticisms out there, and yeah, you got to take it to heart, and it hurts, and you try to do something different the next time.
Well, let's talk about the next time. Tell me a little bit about the new book.
The Shadow People. Yeah. So, the Shadow People is I hope not an overcorrection, but I definitely went back to my wheelhouse, or at least, my first book was Junkie Love, and that's the one everyone's sort of, it's both nice and depressing, because no matter what I do, there's people like, oh yeah, that's nice, but Junkie Love, and Junkie Love was the first book I wrote when I didn't really know how to write a book, and it's a lot of just crazy sprawling. I was in a rehab, and I was coming out of just 10 years of being addicted and homeless. And I had all these crazy conspiracy theories, because when you live that way, everything's just, anyway, Shadow People goes back to that world. Although it's looked at, it's the protagonist is a straight man, is the guy who doesn't know anything about that world. And he has a friend who is, his best friend from when they were kids, had schizophrenia and meth, psychosis mirror one another. You meet a lot of meth addicts who have schizophrenia. You can't tell the difference between the two. So the idea is that he goes back, hearing about the mysterious disappearance, death of his friend, and he gets sucked into this world of conspiracies. His friend was writing a conspiracy magazine called The Shadow People. Well, yeah, and it's about the Shadow People. So he gets sucked into that world and sees just things. Reality starts to blend, where you start questioning your own sanity. So it's a novel where I get to return to kind of my powerhouse, my wheelhouse, what I do. But also, with I would hope, the removed perspective of somebody who's no longer in that world.
Right. Well, it's interesting. I've read parts of Junkie Love, and I understand, I guess, maybe that feeling of being when you make a statement like that, and then you end up where you're at, where you're, you know, you're doing this thing that clearly you're successful and people admire it, and you know, I can see why people maybe want to just pigeonhole you. Hey, you know, what else you got? Do that one again, or what have you. I would say to anyone, man, you're really missing out because you know, you have a lot to offer. There's no question about it.
Thank you. I just
But
don't
I
think
also like how you do incorporate a lot of that mindset. I mean, again, I love the Jay Porter series, but also, you know, any of the other things I've seen you write in your short stories and things like that, you capture how you mentioned that the whole Springsteen kind of ethos. And I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the short story anthologies that you've edited and written for. But you really tap into that, which is not the same thing as the junkie love thing. So, you know, how do those two mesh for you?
Well, you know, I did an interview a while ago, and I said something that I didn't plan on saying, but it was like every story is basically a variation on Rocky. You get knocked down, you have no reason to get up, you know you're going to lose, and you get up anyway, and that's kind of really what I do. Guys who these are stories about generally people who are going to lose. But I mean, life itself is a losing proposition, right? I read the other day, it's the most depressing thing I've read in a while. It was like, eating healthy is only the slowest way to kill yourself. Because, right, I mean, we're on our way out. You're born to this world dying. But there's something romantic in that. There's something heroic in knowing it's a losing proposition. And in Rocky, when he says to Adrian in the middle of the night, he wakes up, he's like, I can't beat this guy. Like, I can't win. But the one that I can do is stand on my feet, and that is such an American ideal, and it speaks to us all because we all wake up. I don't care who you are, you know, everybody wakes up and feels overwhelmed. I mean, I gotta believe even the richest of the rich wake up feeling with some kind of pit, and you know that you have that American sort of sadness, and you trudge on, you go on, and some people have it a lot easier. I was listening to a bit with Jerry Seinfeld, and he was like, everybody's life sucks. My life sucks. My life might suck less than your life, but my life sucks. And I really think that's true. I think we all go on and do the best we can, and we take the hits, and that's where the poetry is going on when you don't have a reason to go on. But I mean, how many songs have been written about, right? John Cougar Mellencamp, you know, long after the thrill of living is gone. Like, it's just what we do.
Do you think that's why people connect so much with crime fiction? I mean, you know, on the surface you go, you know, there's no good people in crime fiction, right? That's the whole point of noir thing, is that everybody's got an angle and everyone's playing off something else and all that kind of thing. But do you think that's why people connect with it so much?
Yeah, good people's tough. You know, yeah. I mean, there's no good people. These are bad people. I think a lot of people, like most everybody, has the right intention. They have really good intentions, and the results sort of just suck. And I know intentions don't matter, and they don't. I mean, in the end, that's your product. But I think everybody's trying to do the right thing. In their own view of the world, they're trying to be the hero. They're trying to do the right thing, and even the bad guys trying to do the right thing, and that's when you get the good bad guys. And you know, the cardboard cutout ones, you know, the generic sort of bad guys don't resonate nearly as much as the ones, you know, your Hannibal Lecters or whatever. You know, where you have this sort of just duplicitous, blurred line between right and wrong and what we're doing. But yeah, I think that's part of the reason crime speaks to people. I also think everybody, if you caught them in an honest moment, would admit they'd love to be a criminal. I think everybody would love to be a criminal. You know, like you see the system and the world and the way it is, and who wouldn't like to do a heist, right? I mean, a heist is sort of let's go, you know, do a little
Right.
you know, let's rob the Louvre. But most people are, you know, they're more sane than that, and they got their job, and so there's sort of vicarious living through that. And yeah, I think it's life in extremis. It's watching people in these desperate moments doing desperate things, and there's a sort of a perverse thrill in that, especially when you have a 9-to-5 or more state existence. But I think it's also a perverse thrill for anybody, because it's, you know, crime fiction, what it does well is it moves and it grabs you, and it takes you someplace dark and twisted and sort of perverted and weirdly fun.
Right. Well, as I've said multiple times now, I love the Jay Porter series. I tell me a little bit about that. And I know you said you don't want to write the same character forever and a day. What is the future? Are we done with that, or is there?
It's funny you mentioned that, because I had a call with Ocean View, the publishers, about 2 weeks ago, talking about doing another Jay Porter book, because after a couple of years, I started to get the itch to write the character again, and I started thinking of new ideas, and I would do idea where I would take the character and what I would do with them, and just totally a new arc, because obviously the 5 books wrap up that Manafort thing. But my agent wants me to hold off for the time being, which is agent says hold off, I'll hold off. But yeah, I already have an idea, and I kind of, the way I envision doing something would be, you see Marlowe, or you see these investigators who are so wounded and damaged, and they're men of few words, and you don't know what their story is. Like, something really fucked up happened to Marlowe in his past. And the idea I had was that, if you want to know why Jay Porter's as fucked up as he is, you can go back and read the first 5 books, but there wouldn't be any talk of the Lombardis. There wouldn't be any talk of his brother. It would just be sort of a quieter, more pensive, Porter moving forward, a little bit like Heathcliff in Wuthering Heights, where you hear the backstory about, wow, that's why he's like he is. And one of my favorite books is Wuthering Heights, surprisingly. But yeah, for the time being, it's on hold. And we got other oars in the fire, pokers in the water, however that goes. So we're waiting.
Well, I also wanted, again, I was going to ask this later, but let me ask you now, because you mentioned it. For folks who may not know the Manafort connection, tell me a little bit about the Manafort connection.
Oh yeah. They're fucking bunch of assholes.
That part I think is clear. But tell us their connection to you.
The Manaforts are made up. One Manafort is a made-up family name. They're only a few generations old. So if you hear a Manafort, they're all related. My brother was married into the Manafort family to a horrible thing over there. My father worked for the Manafort family. So in the book, in the Porter series, I changed it to the Lombardi brothers, and you have Paul. You have Michael and Adam. One's in politics, one's in construction. In real life, the Manafort family splits into 2. Paul's in politics and Frank's in construction. My father worked with Frank, and what happened was, basically, long story short, is they true to their scumbag family reputation, they did a testing on some soil my dad was a foreman of, and they found it was poisonous and would eventually kill. And they just decided that it was cheaper to pay out the wrongful death suit, when it eventually came about, than it was to clean up. And so my father was sent out there along with a bunch of other men who, got sick and died. And my father and I weren't close, and it's not like a crusade to kind of avenge him. He was, my dad was what he was. But it's really sad that families like that exist, and it's sad they get away with those things. Paul Manafort was at my brother's wedding, and I still remember the fucking shiny silver sharkskin suit he showed up in, and he was just a fucking douchebag then. He just stood out in the room like a douchebag, and then when all this stuff started happening, there was no surprise. And people was like, "Aren't you worried about like they don't fucking care about me? No, they don't give a shit. They don't give a shit. They killed my father, and in essence, they killed my brother. Like they don't care what they can care about me for. They don't care. People like that, they don't. There's no comeuppance for them. There's no retribution. If they go to prison, they just get fucking pardoned. And if they're in prison, they're in a fucking country. The people like that don't pay back in this life. And you just have to hope that there is a God, and he's a just God, and he's a vengeful, righteous God, and that people like Paul Manafort and his brother will be spending eternity in hell.
Right.
Which probably not true, but they'll probably get a good afterlife too.
Well, the thing about people like that, though, I tell people all the time, because I cover politics for a living, and I tell people all the time, the realities are far different than what you think, and often they're even stranger, and even more so. I think of The Wire, and I'm trying to remember the reporter who wrote the whole series, The Wire. Again, I'm getting old; it comes out of my head. But I remember David Simon.
David, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, David Simon talking about So he was asked one time about the character of Omar and how he, in this one scene, he jumped out of a fourth-story parking garage to escape somebody who was after him, and he survived, right? He just breaks a leg and he survives. And someone said, "Oh, was that couldn't be real, right?" And he said, "That's not how it happened, right?" And he said, "Well, that's true. No, it didn't really actually happen like that. The real Omar, the person I based on, he did jump out, but it was the sixth floor, not the fourth. But I figured if I wrote it that way, nobody was ever going to believe that he actually survived, even though that was the truth." The point of that question is, when you're talking about a Paul Manafort or somebody like that who is such a real and true profound douchebag and the kind of person he is, does it make you hesitant to write a character that's actually like him because you wonder if people are even going to believe there's somebody who's actually that awful?
It's true. I probably softened both Adam and Michael Lombardi in the end, and made them more human, and I made Jay more culpable, just because you want to get away from that black and white, good is bad. I mean, I think every hero is a little bit of a villain, and every villain is a little bit of a hero. I think the reality is a lot grayer, and people like Paul Manafort or Michael Lombardi or any of those, I think they're all doing what they think is right, it's in their interest, and it's all comes down to point of view and their interest, and it's just their interest is sort of greedy and douchebaggery, and ours, I would like to believe, is a little or more earnest. But who knows? Who knows from their point of view? I mean, it's you're talking about the people that killed my dad. They have a $1 billion construction industry or whatever, and they're thinking they employ these people, and these people count on us for insurance, or I'm sure their rationale wasn't let them die. I'm sure the way they spun it and the way they slept at night was to create a narrative that was much more palpable and that painted them in a better light, and they were somehow the good guys. Looking at it from the outside, somebody who wasn't really had an invested interest in any of it, because I wasn't particularly close with my dad. But just looking at it from the outside, it was just a fucked up story. It was my dad and I didn't get along, but I have kids now, and it would be nice if you got to meet my kids. And who knows what happens as somebody gets old. He died when he was 56. I was coming off the streets, like we didn't have a chance to repair anything. And who knows, you get older and you work through things, and maybe we come to some kind of accord. And that is tragic that my kids can't meet their grandfather. It's not tragic to the world at large, but it's tragic to me. It's tragic to my kids. And so, that's the sort of thing that the human element you're looking at when you're writing something like the Porter series. But at the same time, you're making things, the pages have to turn. So you got mystery and intrigue and all this, but what I'm interested in as an artist is really that deeper sort of sense of loss and longing and how we keep going.
Right. I've mentioned your short stories. I'm a big consumer of anthology short stories. I love noir and I love crime fiction. And I love many of the collections I've seen that have this thread. And I've seen you edit several now. Some that are based on songs of Johnny Cash and the Midwest noir. Tell me a little bit about that. What's the attraction for you to that kind of thing, number one? And then, how do you approach short stories as opposed to, a novel or something that might be longer?
Well, we'll start with the second one first. I mean, I honestly find, and I'm not, this isn't hyperbole, I find writing novels easier than writing short stories. You can just do more and get in there, and you have room to move. Short stories they're so condensed, and they're just harder for me to write. They've always been harder for me to write, but the allure, now I write them if somebody contacts me and says, "Hey, I'll give you some money to write a short story," and then I'm like, "Okay, now I'll do it." But I stopped writing short stories, then just writing them and then sending them out. Like I'm not doing that anymore. I did that all through grad school. It was just brutal, relatively brutal. But the allure of all these anthologies I've been the editor of and not the writer in, and I really enjoy editing. I enjoy, you're looking at it, as opposed to, producing a record or being a musician. It's just nice when you can kind of step back from having, being involved in the creation from that angle, and now seeing somebody else's creation and you see what they're trying to say, and you can extrapolate and pull this out and take this away and try to help them present the best view. And then of course you have to control over the cohesion of the entire project. With Springsteen, the Springsteen anthology was a baby because I'm so in love with Springsteen. I mean, that's who is my, and I wrote this in the foreword, my single biggest literary influence is Bruce Springsteen. You know, this idea he could, you know, what he would do in a song, and he'd write and he'd whittle down the essence to just the one line that would take novelists and, you know, entire books. The line in Backstreet, remember all the movies, Terry, we thought we'd be, they're trying to learn how to walk like the heroes where I thought we had to be. And he hits on, you know, I'm sick of sitting around here trying to write this book, and Dancing in the Dark, like, just wow. And it hits the heart, and I will spend 300 pages trying to say what Springsteen could say in a line, and he just found a way to do it. So to take that and then take his titles and the essence of his songs, we didn't use any plots, but the essence of what he embodies, and then watch these authors take it and see what they're going to do with it. You know, what Hillary Davis did with Hungry Heart, and what Jordan Harper did with Prove It All Night. Just fantastic takes. And the Harper story, especially that last line, just kills me to this day. One of my favorite short stories, the one, the piece Jen Conley wrote, not Jennifer Connelly, I'm getting confused, Jennifer Hilliard, Jen Conley, who wrote a story for both that, and she wrote for the Cash anthology, which was another, she's just a writer an amazing short story writer, and she's also a great novelist. But her short stories, I mean, just a gut punch, and you either have it or you don't with the short stories. It's funny, I was talking to my friend Tom Pitts, who is another writer. He's a former junkie who we both quit, and we both went to crime fiction, but he had never read Tobias Wolff's Bullet in the Brain. So we were texting the other day, and I'm like, you got to read this now, because it's 4 pages of just, and it's online anyway. But wow, I forgot how, like, man, that is a short story, and that is so hard to do, to condense and whittle down into that. The less you have to work with, the harder it is to convey what somebody like Tobias Wolff can do. And of course, that's a pretty hh standard, right? It's probably the best short story ever written.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the reason I like them. You know, you really get an awful lot in a short package, and I know how challenging it is. We're right on time, so here I always like to end with a question that I intend to be fun. I hope it's fun. What I like to do is offer you, let's just say I was a man with the power to put you together with any one of the following 3 people for a nice conversation of any length that you'd like. I'm going to offer you 3 people, and you tell me which one you would pick and why.
Springsteen. All right.
I'm not going to give you Springsteen because I know you would pick him. So I'm going to give you 3 others though that I think are pretty enticing from what I think I know of you. So the first one's going to be one we've talked about already a little bit, Johnny Cash. The second would be the infamous Bonnie Parker, and then the last one would be the late great Yankee hero Mickey Mantle. Any one of those 3 I could put you together with for a great conversation. Who would you choose and why?
Well, I mean, Bonnie Parker, I'm going to rule out just because doesn't have as much interest in me as the other 2 are fascinating. I mean, Bonnie Parker's great, but Mickey Mantle or Johnny Cash, you know, is a Yankee fan, to not take Mickey Mantle feels like a mortal sin. Of course, is a rebel rock and roller. The same is true of Johnny Cash. But yeah, gun to the head, I am secretly. Don't tell anybody. If I could have my choice, I would have been a baseball player. I'm a jock at heart. I know it goes against the tenets of what I am. But yeah, I'd have to go Mickey Mantle. I just how do you not sit down with Mickey Mantle?
I'm not surprised. I'll ask, have you ever read Jane Levy's book, The Last Boy?
No, I've not.
I recommend it highly. I've read a couple different Mantle biographies. She's fabulous. She's as good as it gets when it comes to really getting into the essence of complicated people like him. She also has a great biography of, she's done a great biography of Ruth, which I haven't read, but was highly, highly acclaimed. And then one of Sandy Koufax, which I have read, which was spectacular. But the Mantle one, he had a tragic life. I feel very sorry for him. I mean, for all of the, yes, I don't feel sorry for him.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
But personally, a lot of the things that I think he became, he's probably was not his choice, and he would have probably had a better life. Even, I mean, you know, we can say whatever we want, but he had a lot of tragedy in his life. He had a lot of tragedy in his life, you know. And,
you know, I don't read books about people like Mantle or Johnny Cash, mostly because it's a variation on "Don't Meet Your Heroes." You know, I don't want, like, I know it's bad, and these guys weren't good guys. Like, I mean, Johnny Cash was not. I mean, he did a lot of fucked up shit. He wasn't a very nice person. Like John Lennon beat his first wife. I mean, like, it's just things about your heroes. I don't, you know, I mean, like, I'm from New England. I enjoyed watching Tom Brady win yesterday because I'm from New England. I don't want to think of him of being a Trump supporter. I just don't. Like, you know, so I don't want to know about Mickey Mantle's tragic upbringing. I know it's hard. It's heartbreaking. I'm sure I'll get around to it, but yeah, I mean, I prefer the lower, just the you know, golden boy in center field, and just think about it like that.
Yeah, I know. Well, you know, and I didn't ask you about setting, but maybe if we talk again, I'll ask you a little bit about New England versus West Coast for settings, because I you know, that's one of those questions. But I'll save something for maybe another talk sometime. For those of you who I hope you enjoyed this. Please, again, hit the subscribe button. That'll keep my folks around me happy that I said hit the subscribe button. If you haven't read any of Joe's books, highly recommend it. Please do, because you will not regret it. One of the best noir and crime fiction folks out there. If you haven't read The Lake House, which I admit I have not got to yet, I'm going to. I'm reading December Boys as we speak right now. But I read Skunk Train, which I absolutely love, one of my favorite books. So anyway.
Well, that's kind of the dark portion of Can. I really do like that one too, though.
Good, great book. Good. Again, as a Northern California guy too, I'm like, you know, I love that. Everything about it's great. Anyway, if you haven't, look up Joe's work, check it out. If you haven't, hit the subscribe button and then join us. Coming up very soon, next week, I'll be sitting down and having a conversation with the fabulous crime fiction writer Tracy Clark out of Chicago. If you haven't read her Cass Rains series, again, I highly recommend it. She's very, very good. And, you know, political reporter like myself. So, okay, I like that too. Anyway, Joe, thank you again. Really appreciate it. Hopefully this wasn't too painful for you.
Oh, it was my pleasure. It was fun.
Great. And with all of that, we'll say goodbye and see you next time on the Open Mic. Stay with me just 1 second, Joe.